Good morning on this Wednesday morning. My name is Sean Michael Small. This is AM Prime. I am holding on, of course, for my compatriot, my comrade, Mr. Andy Johnson. Of course, those of you who have been watching for the last couple of days would have known that we're standing in as Mr. Johnson is away. Mr. Keaton Shaw, he held the fort for the last 2 days. However, it's my turn to take a spin in the 6 a.m. chair. And I am here with you this morning to have, hopefully, a packed show. We are hoping to have a conversation with members from the Penal Day Bay Corporation with regards to a situation with their budget allocation for this year, which of course is going to be over soon. So we'll get into the details of that, hopefully clarify some things and see what's going wrong and see what might be in the works to alleviate that situation. Then later on, of course, the TTPS Media Ambassador, Acting Assistant Superintendent of Police Ashraf Ali, he is talking points, Monday contributor. However, for AM Prime, we are still able to have him. We're going to have him today. The producers of the show, they asked an interesting question. I'm ashamed that I didn't ask it myself, and that is, what's the follow-up with regards to asking the police to help deal with school violence? Now, the education system has been in the news between the wage negotiations of the teachers, but we still, of course, have to remember that there are other problems dealing with our education system. What's going on with school violence? How is that being followed up? Especially with the state of crime in the nation and the tumultuous start of the new school year. And then finally, of course, the private sector is still something that is important in TNT, particularly when the government seems to be lacking the funds to meet all of the requests of it. However, the private sector is under strain these days. So we're going to have a talk with the head of the San Juan Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to get into how things are looking on at his end. Of course, not all businesses have to deal with exactly the same problems, but we'll get a pulse of the nation, a somewhat of an indication, see how things are going, because these things can change week to week, month to month, so we always need to get updates to these critical stories, not just talk about them once, let them die into the ether as get distracted by the new political bacchanal and bubble, because these things, they affect us every day. So, with that, let's take a break. When we come back, hopefully we'll get into the first conversation with regards to the regional corporations. Maybe we might get some insight with regards to all regional corporations. So this affects potentially everybody. This is important. Stay tuned. This is AM Prime, folks, on WESN, the start of your morning on your content capital.
Chantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker, Saturday, September 24th, 2022, Central Bank Auditorium, showtime 7:30 p.m., featuring Three Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Rima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Marte Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and let me introduce my two guests this morning. And gentlemen, I apologize if I do you a disservice, but we have with us a councillor from Debe South, Mr. Kemraj Sicharan. Yes?
Yes,
good morning, sir. And then, of course, we have a Barrackpore West councillor, Mr. Nicholas Kanhai. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, gentlemen, of course, local government, I think, is being highlighted just a little bit more and a little bit more each day. However, a lot of what goes on, a lot of the problems that you'll experience is not necessarily highlighted enough on the national stage. So a report came out where essentially it has been said that the allocation of funds for your corporation has been not necessarily all forthcoming. The transfer of funds, I believe, into your account, is that correct? You all are just looking to get the funds transferred to your account so you all could effectively use it, both to deal with flooding as well as to potentially help alleviate short-term employment problems. Are those the two main concerns?
Well, that's correct. Two of the many concerns.
So first of all, the claims are correct with regards to the funds. You all have not necessarily received all the funds allocated for this year, even though we are close to the close of the end of the year, basically, 2022. I believe your chairman said just under 50% of the allocation still has not yet been released. Is that correct?
Well, actually, yeah, the statistics were we would have received just around 55% of the allocated funds that was allocated to the Penal Labor Corporation. Of course,
if I could just add, Kimraj, just to step back a bit. When a budget is read in Parliament and it's passed, and allocation is made, but a year before or months before, as a matter of fact, each corporation or each state entity would basically submit its estimates of what it expects to expend in the next fiscal year. And the Penal Labor Regional Corporation for 2021-2022, we would have made a request for about $100 million to do works for this fiscal year. When the budget was in fact read and passed, only $63 million were allocated to our corporation. When that $63 million is allocated, it is just that, an allocation. It has no bearings in terms of releases. So every single month or day or week, a corporation would have to go and write to the Ministry of Finance and basically beg for that money to be released. We would expect, if that's the system, we would expect that we would get releases in a timely fashion so that we can meet the request and meet the program of works in our region. So you're quite correct to say that in the last month, or we are on the 7th of September, so the last 23 days, we are still waiting for 45% of funding to be released. And just to touch on the other thing that you said, which is the short-term employment, if we are to hire 150 short-term employment personnel per fortnight, because we run on a fortnightly cycle, it means that we would need ideally $9 million to meet that short-term employment need for the financial year. However, we were allocated $7 million from the onset. So we had a deficit from the start. So obviously, we were in a bad situation, and making a bad situation worse, the funds are now not being released on a timely manner.
Well, so you're lacking funds. Mr. Sicharan, you were explaining that there were more than just the flooding and the short-term labor. Could you elaborate on those two problems as well as elaborate on potentially some of the other major issues you all are dealing with right now?
Of course. So the Penal Labor Corporation lies mostly within the Oropouche Basin. And that means the major rivers that passes through the southern region, starting from all the way Barrackpore, well, actually even further up, it's from Moruga, comes into Barrackpore and then into the Penal Levy area, goes down into woodland, and then, of course, into the sea via the Godino River down by the creek. So that's to say that Penal Levy is a floodplain. It's a floodplain because the major rivers passes through the area of Penal Levy. So to mitigate the idea of flooding is that the water does have to pass through the area. So that's one of the things that we always have to be mindful of in, allocation and money and funds and all of that, because even if the rain doesn't fall in Penal Levy, essentially we are the route that which the water has to pass through. Mm-hmm. So, of course, in saying that, there's very little, of course, there's no funds being released to us, so there's very little that we can do in terms of maintaining smaller water courses, drains, and so forth. And on top of what we are mandated to do in terms of the ones that we are responsible for, Ministry of Works have neglected the water courses that they're in charge of. So now we are already in a bad situation where 45% of our funds are still tied up in some bureaucracy or red tape somewhere. And then we have Ministry of Works not doing their part. So we have to use our limited 55% to fix our water courses and their water courses. And of course, the funds just doesn't add up. Right. So it's impossible for us to get this task done. So we have bridges that's been basically almost submerged into the river. And we will touch on those in a little bit because our bridges situation is so dire right now, especially in Penal Levy. But apart from the bridges, embankments, simple embankments just are not being built. And because of those embankments, we have communities being flooded again and again. I mean, we're 3 months into the rainy season, and we had 5 episodes of flooding already. I mean, this is unprecedented. I mean, yes, I understand weather patterns are changing, climate change is so real, yet so little is being done to help mitigate problems such as these. And I mean, embankments are a simple thing. You're using, there's nothing extra to bring in. You're just taking dirt from one area, packing it on the banks, putting it in a structure or grading it in a way that it's not easily eroded away. And it lasts a long time. So it's not that we have to import this material or we have to get this extra mindset or engineering skill. It's simple things that we can do.
Well, and it feels that way.
We have so much hills. We have dirt. We have mountains. We have these things easily accessible to us. So simple things as releasing fundings for equipment, getting equipment to access these water courses. I mean, it's so poor that we are begging for something as dirt to put on a riverbank. This is 2022.
Now, for the interest of time, I do want to clarify the short-term employment that some families might be dependent on. To be fair, the corporation, of course, needs individuals to do some of this work. Is that reasonable to say? So you, of course, to some extent, need to be able to have at least some level of employment, keep them engaged, keep them employed under the corporation to some degree so that you have manpower to do some of this work as well?
Well, and one of the things that persons have been saying on social media is that, people shouldn't be dependent on corporation work and attendees and all of that. And I want to make it very abundantly clear, it's not that people are dependent on corporation work. We as a corporation are dependent on these persons because cleaning drains and cutting roads and going on to mud and silt and rivers, we need them more than they probably need us, because if they don't maintain, then we're going to just be living in a jungle. So as much as, yes, these persons might be unemployed and they are seeking employment, we as a corporation, to fulfill our mandate, we need them. And if we don't have the resources to hire them, then there's no drains to be cleaned. There's going to be rats all over the place. There's going to be flooding everywhere. There's going to be overgrown bushes, roads that we can't see because bushes are just taking over. So I want people to look at the mindset in that way, where we as a Penal Levy corporation, or even corporations across Trinidad and Tobago, we need these persons that helps us. They say sometimes it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. And these people are willing to do it.
Well, I want to move on because we do have limited time, so I don't want to miss out on some important stuff. Mr. Khan, I now have to ask, going back with regards to the funding itself, right? Now speaking with members of the THA, at least initially, because they're a different party, of course, to the government, their communication has not actually been bad. Apparently, at least it started off pretty good. But that's a unique situation, I think, that is a bit, that took everybody by surprise. Now, the situations of the corporations, and from what I understand, not even necessarily P&M corporations are safe from some of these difficulties. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it depends on a corporation by corporation basis and the internal politics. I don't know. But ministries and other corporations themselves also do have some budgetary problems. What has been your communication specifically, right? Whether it's UNC councillors or P&M councillors, because they can have P&M councillors in a UNC-controlled corporation. What has been your communication for your areas councillors with central government, the cabinet, your line minister of local government, and the Ministry of Finance? Has it been good, bad?
Well, let me first off say this. In terms of the allocation, we will just use a comparison of 2015. The Penal Labor Regional Corporation was allocated $90 million. In 2022, we allocated $63 million. So we had a deficit, well, a reduction of $27 million, which is 33%. So of course, we can do 33% less work. That's one. The second thing is, when we recognized that there was a deficit of $2 million of short-term employment, 48, 49, 50 days ago, the Minister of Local Government would have publicly chastised my chairman, Dr. Alan Sami, that we're complaining about funding and so on, and why we don't via the money. Environment is basically taking money that is allocated under one particular head or subhead and moving it to something else which may be of a critical need. In this case, it was employment, so we had to take money from several different areas to make up that deficit of 1.1 million to take us through until the end of the financial year. In our calculation, that $1.1 million would have been sufficient for the final 6 weeks or the 3 10-day cycles that will take us to the end of September 30th. And making the requisition, you have to send it to Ministry of Finance. They will send an auditor to come and audit to see if you actually have the money. Partner, the Ministry of Local Government said they never received the documents. And that is where the delay took place. We have our personnel who would have left the corporation, went up there, dropped off the documents. They said they didn't get it. But you're talking about communication, so I'll get back to that. We follow the minister's instructions, and he didn't pull through. Every time we speak to the minister, our chairman would talk on WhatsApp, via email, via phone call as necessary. And we have always been given that assurance that yes, it's being worked on. Yes, it's approved. Yes, 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 yes. And then up to today, on the 7th of September, it has not been forthcoming. So the communication is good enough, very pleasant and very nice. But to me, it seems like a damn puppy show.
Would you say it's the central government potentially just not doing its work, or could there also be issues with the bureaucracy? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people, for better or worse, who are involved in this process. I myself have said on multiple occasions, the bureaucratic public sector, public service needs to be reformed. Is there any issues there as well, or do you think it's just down to the central government?
Oh, for sure. Bureaucracy is the government of the day. Well, this government really, they thrive on the bureaucracy. They're very much comforted that we have to go through layers of approval before they release the funds to us. So yes, the issue exists with bureaucracy, the red tape, the amount of different channels you have to go through to get something as simple as environment approved and the funding released.
Well, gentlemen, I want to ask now, moving forward, because 2023's budget is going to be read before the end of the month. And I assume there will be some amount of allocation for all regional corporations at that budget. You all are still missing 45%. Have you all heard any indication as to what's going to happen with that 45%? I mean, right now, from what I understand, you all were merely asking for $1 million, I believe, to do work right now. But that, I'm sure that's just a very small fraction of the 45%. From $63 million, 45% of that. Any indication as to when you all might see that money? Will you all ever see that money? Will it come before the next financial year, or at the very least alongside some of the money of the next financial year? Maybe you all will see some of that, or is it just a write-off?
Well, maybe I could touch on it
Yeah,
again,
sure.
like Nicholas. So, of course, with the red tapes that go along with everything else, there's a stipulation that unspent balances goes back to the consolidated fund. So it goes back to the government. So frustrate us, don't give us the money. And even if, let's say, some miracle happens and they decide to move quickly and remove some of this red tape, and on the 25th of September, they decide to release so much money to us, maybe a few millions, then it becomes almost impossible for us to spend these monies, because you can't just spend it so easily. You have to get tenders, you have to, and not just one, you have to get 3 tenders, you have to get persons who is interested. There's so much red tape that surrounds spending the money as well. Then the 30th of September comes and the government says, oh, well, penal Davy, we gave you 63 million, you all only spend 40 million, so next budget, well, clearly you'll only need 40 million to do your operation. So we are justified now to cut your budget. But of course, there goes so much more accounting or nitty-gritty into the process. But just as Nicholas was mentioning before about, something as simple as environment. You have an auditor that has to leave Kent House or Port of Spain or head office or so forth to come to Penal Daily to audit our books to see if we would have spent this money, if this money is available.
Right.
You are the accountant body, the head accountants that oversees this process. You tell me you don't have a copy of this in Port of Spain. You have to leave one entire day to the enforcement to come to Penal Daily to look at our books when you are the one who is giving us the money. So you know exactly how much we have, how much would have been spent. But you want to add all of these additional layers, and now we're almost 40-something days into this environment. We have seen environments done in a quicker space of time. So it begs the question, yes, bureaucracy, yes, red tapes, yes, the frustration, but then is it just neglect? Or is it just deliberate discrimination against the Penal Daily Corporation?
Well, my last question,
there.
because we're almost out of time, I just need to ask, and this has to be real quick. Have you all heard anything from other corporations, whether it be UNC corporations, P&M corporations, behind the scenes? I don't need specifics. Are other corporations suffering like this? You know, not necessarily the exact same way, but similar to this? Or do you all think that this is unique to yourselves?
It is not unique to us alone. I know that our colleagues at the Siparia Regional Corporation, they are in fact having a press conference to deal with exactly the same thing. So Pinalebe, we kickstarted the advocacy, because our press conference was last week and it was followed by a protest this week. So Siparia is doing exactly that. And I just want to say one thing before we close, that the United National Congress, our party has actually kickstarted its consultations, pre-budget consultations, because we believe in understanding and hearing from the residents themselves as to what they need, what is it's important to them, and what they would like to see in the budget. And that will gauge what we advocate for, what our MPs and so on advocate for, and then we would see that being discussed in the Parliament. But this government, they have not even been able to consult with those who elected them.
Well, gentlemen, we are more or less out of time. I will leave you with 2 parting words, and this is just my personal opinion. 1, give the government all the latitude to make the error. Don't make the errors for them, right? Whatever you all have to do to try to do all the right things, cross all your T's, dot all your I's, and then come to the media and tell us when they did not follow through with their promises. And that's the other thing. This is a topic like many others that I believe is not getting the attention it deserves, and it's been existing for I don't even want to know how long. And I think, don't wait. You could reach out to us and your colleagues, anyone who's listening from either side of the aisle. I don't expect the P&M councillors to necessarily reach out for obvious reasons. But don't wait, reach out to us. Let's have this conversation, because this is some very real practical problems that are affecting people's lives. So gentlemen, I would like to thank you, Mr. Sichora and Mr. Kanai, for having this discussion with me. It was very good. I'm very happy to have it, and I hope that we'll be able to see you in whatever capacity within the next few days, months, weeks, maybe even years.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, have a good morning, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to take a break now. When we return, hopefully we will have Acting ASP Ashraf Ali. We will go back to the topic of schools, more particularly school violence, but we'll be right back. This is AM Prime.
your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is AM Prime, the start of your morning on WSN, your content capital, and I'm Sean Michael Small. And before we get into my conversation with ASP Ali, just want to go to the Newsday poll. And the question, of course, I think it's an interesting one given that we have the topic of schools. So, do you think government should ensure that the children of legally registered Venezuelan migrants have spaces or be allowed spaces in the public school system? Because we've heard reports that these children, well, they have no opportunity for schooling. So, a couple of answers from your fellow citizens. First, who paying for government charity? That's of the mind of that individual. It's an interesting question. I think it should be debated. I don't know if I agree with the sentiment though, but it should be debated. Moving on, yes, which means more schools need to be built to ensure citizens as well as legal Venezuelan national children get an education. And therein lies the crux, right? Could we afford to do it? However, the ethics of the situation perhaps might demand the sacrifice. Who knows? Moving on, hope all are willing to pay more taxes to achieve that goal. Therein lies the eventual answer to that. Finally, the last answer we have for you. The government should have made that happen 3 years ago and not now. In my view, if Venezuelans are legally registered, they should be allowed in both private and public schools, education for all and not for one. And therein lies the ethical quandary that our society finds itself in. It's not necessarily a simple problem, folks, but it is one that we should look to try to find a solution for if we want to be responsible. Because if they're living here, we need to integrate them, let them be productive members of society, contribute. We benefit too in the long run. But let's stick up in that there, still staying on the topics of schools, but shifting a bit, pivoting a bit with regards to an old story that we might have forgotten. school violence. We have ASP Ashraf Ali with us. That is the TTPS Media Ambassador to both talking points as well as the WESN on a whole. Good morning, Mr. ASP Ali. Good morning. How are you going? And, you know, it's been a while.
Yes, good morning, Sean. I hope you're feeling well.
Yes. Well, of course, we don't have much time. Let's get right into it. We actually had this conversation both on and off air with regards to the police service being asked to come in, deal with school violence. First of all, I do want to ask, given the Monday's rest and reflect, was there any incidents that might have happened whereas potentially you would have had quite a lot of students be unsupervised or potentially unsupervised for what would have been the first school day? Was there any incidents of concern?
Well, good morning to all the viewers. And Trinidad and Tobago on the whole. Thankfully, we didn't have no incidents. We were anticipating the fact that we had the first day of school, so we would have had officers out and paying attention to the surroundings and where children were accommodated. But the fact that we had a lot of children, students out, made it a little easier for us initially on Monday. But on Tuesday, we're back to square one because we had a number of children out. The issues surrounding reopening of school continues, with the exception that, fortunately for us and for Trinidad and Tobago, we have not had any incidents of any violence thus far, and we are hoping that it does not rear itself up again. So yes, we were prepared for Monday, and we didn't have any incident thus far.
Well, so of course now this is Wednesday. Of course, there will be kids going out on the third day of the new school term, plus as well as the new school year. But of course, last year, the call was made from the Ministry of Education asking for assistance from the TTPS. So with regards to last term, last year, how did that go? Was it successful? Did the TTPS involvement make a difference? Were you all limited in what sort of impact you all could have? Was there a calm down on the number of incidents in the last term?
So it was successful to the extent that we were able to reduce the number of activities and number of incidents that the number of violent incidents we had in schools. Now, there was a strain on the police service in terms of redeploying our resources to certain areas where, not in the school environment alone, there would have been externally to the school, a lot of different pockets where students would have combinated to get taxis and even just lime on the street. So there was a lot of stretch on the resources, but we were eventually able to manage that situation. It is something that the Commissioner of Police now will be looking into. Going forward as the new term opens, whether or not we can consistently sustain this type of activity. It is part of our community-related activities, but the sustenance and the sustainability of it over a period of time, we may have to target and look at the high-risk areas and the high-risk schools as opposed to the general school population and to deal with. Now, we have the issues where after school finish, you will have students waiting at different locations around the street waiting for taxis, and sometimes these little areas pose some varying risk to the students and to the general public. So these are things that we will concentrate on stepping up our school patrols and our patrolling along these areas and monitoring these activities as school ends, in the period of when school ends and along that period.
Well, outside of that example, with regards to the time in school itself, has there been any new risks or new concerns? Because of course, as a measure is taken, those who are up to no good, who who have that intention, genuine to themselves, they might try to find new ways to bypass or circumvent the steps being taken to clamp down on, well, bad behavior. Has any new things come up, or has, for the most part, your presence been able to just put a clamp on things and quiet it down?
Well, nothing new has reared its head. We have been controlling the situation thus far, but we just continue, TTPS and our media ambassadors, continue to reinforce some safety tips and some safety issues associated with schools and children that returning back to school. So one of the areas that we normally will concentrate on is the issue of road safety, where you know that there are a number of persons on the streets going to the schools, and everyone wants to go to school at a particular time or reach in time, and there's only so much the road can hold. So you will have, as you see, we have a lot of traffic, and persons are asked to bear with it. I mean, there's not much that we can do in terms of alleviating the traffic, or the roads can only hold so much vehicles at a particular point in time, right? So the issue of road rage, and persons know, and parents should know that if you know you have to leave, your school starts at 8 o'clock, and you take 2 hours to reach a school, and within that 2 hours you end up in a lot of traffic, and the child end up reaching late. I mean, you have to readjust somewhat. You may have to leave half an hour earlier, and these are some of the things that you have to readjust your lifestyle, and have some flexibility to avoid these issues with the heavy amount of traffic in certain areas. Right, and unfortunately, I realized that as Monday, a vehicle that was transporting school children got into an accident. These are risks associated with it, because we have a lot of vehicles that we transport in, and we don't. These things can happen again. So it's something that we have to keep looking at and monitoring, and not only the police service, the general public, and even you as a personal safety measure. You have to try your best not to hustle to reach the school or reach to work, and try to finish everything in a particular time. I mean, if you're late, you can only be late once, and that's the problem. We always feel like we could always reach in time, but you're always running late, and you don't know what emergencies will pop up.
Well, I just have to ask, I don't mean to get you to throw anybody under the bus, but with speaking about the TTPS and your involvement with trying to prevent school violence, the request was made from the Ministry of Education. Now y'all are having to assess if it's sustainable or if it's not sustainable, because at the end of the day, obviously, people complain about crime. That alone is an indication that there are other things that deserve the attention of police officers than just being security guards, depending on how the situation goes. But I do have to ask, have you all been working well with the Ministry of Education and the teachers of the individual schools? Or I mean, again, if you can't answer this politically correct, I would understand, but are the teachers, we've just had a situation when the teachers didn't show up. Have the teachers been coming through as partners to help deal with the situation, or was it all on the TTPS when you all arrived to kind of deal with whatever is going on?
I would say that we have had good relationships and continue to have good relationships with the Ministry of Health and all the schools. Persons need to understand that in a similar fashion that we criticize police officers and how they function, teachers are also criticized, but at the same time, we, members of Trinidad and Tobago, teachers maybe our spouses, maybe our sisters, maybe our brothers, they are maybe our family members. So we don't isolate those individuals and say that they are separate and apart. At the end of the day, they belong to our society and they belong to our family circle. So when they are having challenges, we have to step up at the same time. So yes, we continue to work with them, because at the end of the day, it is not about the police, it is not about the teachers alone. It's about how Trinidad and Tobago cope with and deal with these situations that come up, right? And school violence has always been an issue. It reared its ugly head, and we have been able to pacify that situation. But like, with everything else, once opportunities presents itself, these things can change. These can change very rapidly. So we continue to have through our community policing efforts and in the divisions, station districts, officers visiting schools and building this relationship with the principals and the teachers in schools, and giving up them their time and understanding what is taking place in the school, those specific schools, because we'll have different dynamics in these schools, and working towards them in alleviating some of the challenges.
Well, we only have 2 minutes left. This might be a bit of a heavy question, and if we can't get it all in, we are hoping on Talking Point to have you on Friday, I believe, so we could maybe continue there. But I do want to ask you this now. We just had a 19-year-old accused of murder. Now, he's accused, innocent until proven guilty. I get that. That said, a line potentially has been crossed. It wasn't school violence, but just the fact that a 19-year-old, again, it's not the first time a teenager has been involved in something like this, obviously, or a minor. Well, he's not a minor, sorry. But a line has been crossed. Is there any concern that now that line has been crossed, psychologically it might be easier for other young people who are close to school age or in school might consider crossing that line as well? Are you all bracing potentially for copycats?
No. Remember, a 19-year-old is an adult.
Yeah. So
he's no longer a child, right? And so he has been charged for murder because of the under these circumstances. Now, every situation is unique. I don't want to speak too much about that specific incident, but when you have young adults and teenagers getting involved in situations where they can be potentially charged for murder, it is a concern, and will always be a concern for the TTPS and society, and society should be concerned about it, because it means that we are not doing something right, or whatever we are doing is not sending the correct message or the correct deterrent for young persons to get themselves involved in violent acts that results in the issue of someone being put before the court for murder. So there's a lot of things that may have to come out of this, where different persons from different circles will have to sit and do an assessment of what is taking place, because it is in fact concerning.
Okay, well, I believe this is all the time we might have for this segment. I think we were a little bit late bringing you on, so I apologize for that, ASP Ali, but we can continue this and a couple other things that I did mention to you off air yesterday that I would love to speak to you about come Friday. Hopefully you'll be joining us in the studio on Talking Point, but I'm sorry we're out of time, so I'll have to let you go now.
That's all right. We don't have control of time.
But thanks.
So the small amount that we have and the opportunity to share is always important.
Thank you so much for that, ASP Ali, always giving us important information from the perspective of the TTPS, because communication is a two-way street, folks. However, time is up, so let's take a break here on the AM Prime. When we return, we'll get into some regional content before we have news on the hour. Stay tuned to your content capital, WESN. We'll be right back.
The Guide family has been serving TNT for over 80 years. JE Guide Funeral Home and Crematorium, 2 locations, San Fernando and Princestown.
Shantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker, Saturday, September 24th, 2022, Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring 3 Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Arima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Martin Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
In these COVID times, things are a little different. You may have some skepticism when it comes to going to the hospital or going into the doctor because of crowds or because of so many people being present. We are now in the world of telemedicine.
Telemedicine is the innovation of using technology to treat patients at a distance.
Zakia is here today. She's going to show us a little bit of what she does as part of her at-home exercise routine. What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to AM Prime, the best way to start your day, ladies and gentlemen. Sean Michael Small here, of course, holding on for my colleague, Mr. Andy Johnson. Let's go straight into the regional, and our first feature we have, courtesy of the Guyana News Source. There will be more government support for the indigenous community. Here's more from Guyana News Source.
Promising a better future for indigenous citizens and their communities, President Irfan Ali last evening said there will be a greater inclusion for the country's indigenous people in the nation's development. Delivering the feature address at a celebration of the start of Amerindian Heritage Month, the president said the groundwork has already been laid for the indigenous prosperity. He explained that all Guyanese, regardless of how they look or where they're from, are entitled to the same treatment and opportunities.
Tonight, I reassure every member of our indigenous community that we stand strongly with you in ensuring that our development path, in ensuring that creating the pathway to prosperity will include you, every one of you, every single family, every single region in our indigenous community, whether it's in the riverine area, whether it's on the hill or in the valleys. We will find you, we'll work with you, and we will move you together as we build a country of prosperity for every single family.
President Ali admitted that there is a development gap between the hinterland and coastland regions. He assured, however, that his government will close that gap.
We will make the investment to give you the bandwidth, to give you online education, and I'm saying this tonight, as I said in Region 9. Every single Amerindian with the qualification that want to be trained as a nurse, as a teacher, as a dental technician, as a medical worker, I'm saying to you now, we are committing that we as a government will train every single one of you. Come forward. We will provide the opportunity. We will provide the money. We will provide the environment, and we will give you that opportunity.
The president also said the government is working to secure the rights of indigenous peoples as well as to expand their freedoms. He said the government will also ensure home ownership for indigenous residents by providing part funding and promise to work with banks to ensure low interest rates.
I am not in the business of talking the talk. We are in the business of moving with you. We are not speaking from above you. We are not speaking from beneath you. We are speaking with you, side by side, together, advancing the work.
This year's Amerindian Heritage Month is being observed under the theme celebrating our traditional culture while embracing One Guyana.
And in Barbados, we have the Acting Assistant Commissioner of Police, David Griffith. He said that the 28 murders for 2022, 21 of them have been from firearms. Let's hear more from Barbados.
But of those 28 murders, 21 of them were as a result of the use of firearms. Now, that figure is extremely high, and we are extremely concerned about it. Now, but when we examine these 21 murder cases, 14 of those deceased persons were on bail for various serious offenses, including murder, use of firearm, possession of firearm, serious bodily harm for the use of firearm, and such like. And when we look at that against what we have, 5 stabbings, 1 strangled, and 1 person beaten. No, we cannot underscore the use of firearms in these related murders. And when we look at it in relation to those persons who were on bail, one can see from our investigations that these persons are affiliated with certain groups in Barbados. And it is no secret that these groups are warring against each other. We see it daily. There are persons out there who know of these warring factions. And what we would ask Barbadians to do is, if they see something, the Commissioner has said it this afternoon, the Attorney General has said it. We always say in Barbados, wherever there is a happening, it is witnessed by someone. There's never anything that happens in Barbados that someone do not see. And all we are asking the public Whitfield Police to do is to join with us and share that information. These persons who are warring against each other, like I said, some of them were on bail for things like murder. In one particular case, there was a man on bail for 3 murders.
Well, folks, now we have news on the hour. When we return, we will have our final guest with regards to the private sector of TNT. Stay tuned. This is AM Prime on WESN, your content capital. We'll be right back.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Greater San Fernando head wants a private sector more involved. NATUC alleges government neglected salary discussions for years. Hard labor for man charged with domestic violence offenses. And internationally, deadly Al-Qaeda attack targets Yemen's southern separatists. Now for the details. Head of the Greater San Fernando Chamber of Commerce, Kiran Singh, said a significant private sector presence was lacking at last week's spotlight on the economy.
In the private sector, we remain a significant employer of workers in the country. We contribute greatly to the GDP, to development. The government relies on us for input into all sectors of the economy to ensure productivity. So we would have thought that there could have been some involvement from the private sector to enhance the conversation and, of course, contribute, not only from a government perspective, but a business and societal view of where we see things from an economic point of view, and not only from Port of Spain, but from other business regions throughout the country, including Tobago.
NATUC Secretary General Michael Aniset is accusing the government of delaying salary negotiations for years. The unions would be meeting on Thursday to follow up on discussions.
One must understand that this collective agreement goes back to 10, 12 years in some instances, okay? And that is why you have the accumulated figures that the minister is talking about. And if you are government, and if you are operating an industry or running a government properly, you must understand that you have a commitment to pay living wages, decent wages to your employees, because that is part of what an economy is about.
On to some other news now. A 37-year-old man was sentenced to 8 months hard labor by a Princestown magistrate after he pleaded guilty to offences of larceny, malicious damage and malicious wounding against a female victim. Amaranat Ramnarain Singh of New Grant was also charged with the offence of choking. He was sentenced to 1 month hard labor for the offence of larceny, 1 month hard labor for the offence of malicious damage and 6 months hard labor for malicious wounding. The accused pleaded not guilty to the offence of choking and was granted bail with surety in the sum of $350,000 or $5,000 cash alternative. In international news now, Al-Qaeda fighters have killed at least 20 fighters aligned with Yemen's southern separatists in an attack in the Abyan province, a southern military spokesman has said, adding that all attackers were killed. The armed group of fighters used rocket-propelled grenades, light and medium weapons and military vehicles in the ambush on a security checkpoint in Awa district. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for watching.
Multiple sclerosis is a chronic inflammatory condition affecting the central nervous system.
Being with someone who has MS, you have to have a lot of patience. You have to have a lot of faith.
It's difficult to diagnose until I was even in Mount Hope Hospital for about 3 weeks.
See, I was sitting here, and all of a sudden it feel like somebody trying to pound some needles or a nail on their foot. That is so painful.
Unfortunately, there is no cure for MS at this point in time.
MS creeps upon you. So I had one attack, and by 4 years after that, I had the second attack, and then they said yes to MS.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Welcome back to AM Prime. And as we wait for our next guest, the head of the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers, we will take a look into another regional story, this one from Grenada, and we're looking at the phase 3 of their COVID economic stimulus package has now begun. We have this from the GIS over in Grenada.
More Grenadians who were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic will benefit from assistance from the government of Grenada. This comes with the launch of Phase 3 of the COVID-19 Economic Support Stimulus Package, which will run from September 1st to December 31st. This phase will take a different format by targeting new and existing small businesses in the informal and formal sectors through the provision of financial support in the form of capital incentives and concessions. The goal is to encourage business growth and expansion for persons who are interested in beginning a new business or expanding an existing one. The government believes that investing in our homegrown businesses can boost the local economy and the morale of our people by empowering them to support their families, employ persons, and contribute to community building in a significant way. In addition, the Unemployment Benefit Assistance and Seed Program will be extended for the period September to December 2022, with the inclusion of beneficiaries from the island of Carriacou and Petit Martinique.
And of course, now we have another regional story we want you to follow, and that is in Jamaica. Unfortunately, another incident. A teenager has been murdered in Trench Town in Jamaica. We have more from TVJ News.
Life is upside down for one family, another displaced, and a community on edge following the murder of a 15-year-old in Trench Town last night. The police are urging calm and are asking those with information to come forward. More in this report.
Tears rolled down the cheeks of Eldin Maitland as he held on to his son, 15-year-old Nevada Maitland's book list. They planned to go downtown on Saturday for some last-minute back-to-school shopping together. However, the teen was killed Friday night outside his home on 4th Street in Trenchtown.
This one peaceful and nice and gentle. You don't deserve this.
Residents showed us the hole where the single bullet shot through a metal shop door before hitting the teen. His aunt, who was there at the time, explained what happened.
I just sit down on one chair. And my nephew sit down right there, so behind me, and my next cousin sit down right there, so all of my cousins them sit down there, so my auntie sit down there, so all of the little baby them sit down there, so and I see the man walk out in the road from the man, and him start back, so and me hear the shot, me turn off, and me hear the shot fire, and I run go in the yard. When I come out, my nephew lay down right as upon the ground, one shot in him head.
Nevada, who was a student of the Tivoli High School, was described as quiet and kind. Come Monday, he would have been going into the 10th grade.
If I go back to school, I buy him shoes. Today Saturday, me and him for go downtown, go deal with him uniform and him thing, them for go back in school and him bag. Last night, me and him talk before it happened, and at this I come back up in her.
The murder has angered the community. The area where the shooting took place has been enjoying peace since the start of the year. Our news team understands that a truce between men from Brooklyn and Sox is the reason why. Men from both sides have been allowed to walk anywhere in the community. And so, on what should have been a regular Friday night, when one man walked past as he usually does, he was attacked. Head of the Kingston West Police Division, SSP Michael Phipps, is urging those with information to come forward.
I just want to appeal to persons just to allow the police to do our work in this matter. What they should be doing is to really support us in terms of giving us information where we can make a very early arrest in this particular matter.
The alleged shooters have reportedly not been seen in the community since. However, the police say their families have been forced to leave the community. Officers were seen in the space to prevent any reprisals.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to AM Prime. And now I am joined with, and I will be correcting myself here from earlier this morning, the president of the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers, Mr. Vivek Charan. He is here with us to speak, I believe, primarily on the concerns of those he represents in the private sector with the upcoming budget and potentially the upcoming challenges that are continuing with our economy. Good morning, sir. Happy to have you here with us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me as well. I really appreciate it.
So first of all, let me just, ask you, budget is coming up. What is your concerns and the concerns of those who you speak to, you represent with the next financial year, or maybe what's been going on from the previous year as it's coming to a close?
One of our major concerns is, how the government is going to be handling inflation coming into things. We see inflation as, global inflation. Inflation is a global phenomenon, right? It's something that really happened after the pandemic and when everybody really opened back up. It has a lot to do with the exorbitant shipping fees that are happening right now whenever we're importing anything into Trinidad and Tobago. And to be honest with you, that is actually, that's not the fault of, let's say, the government. Nonetheless, it is something that we have to deal with. We can also say that we can't cut back on everything that we're going to import because, in terms of what our manufacturing base is here, it is not as large as it should be. In addition to that, because of things like globalization and, accessing basic products, whether it's something as simple as apparel or electronic items or appliances or even furniture, basic things that are, when you look at importing it from a larger manufacturing country, whether that be South America, whether that be particularly in the Far East, like India, China, places like that, you find that the price points or the economies of scale that they are able to have there because of the cost of the factors of input into their manufacturing. By the time it reaches Trinidad, it reaches here at a price point that many people can afford. At the end of the day, when you look at what the average income is in Trinidad, we have to understand that the average income, middle-class income, middle income, and low income maybe accounts for like almost 80% of the country. And therefore, the ability to import products at a particular price point or that can fit the budget of the consumers, which is our target markets for those of us in retail, is a very important thing. Well, and so controlling inflation is important.
Well, so to stick to that point, at least for now, and to start with the cost of shipping. Now, I know this has been something that has started from almost the very beginning of the pandemic as trade patterns were greatly affected and changed, and the models that we were accustomed to weren't working as well because the demand patterns and how the business was flowing was off compared to what it was before the pandemic. And it seems like we haven't normalized. And now that it's been, I think, at least 2 years almost of this cost of shipping increase, I have to ask, has it gotten any better? Has it gotten worse? Or is it just stabilized?
It hasn't gotten better. I think it's stabilized. When you look at the fact that a container coming from the Far East would have cost you maybe $2,500 to $3,500, and now it's costing in the vicinity of $12,000 to sometimes $17,000 US dollars, depending on the size of the container. When you're looking at a 20-foot or 40-foot or whatever the route it's going to take and so on, and how fast it's going to come. You're looking at a sizable, a very, very sizable increase. And then when you do the math, so for example, what's in the container, what's the cost of the goods in the container, particularly lower cost goods. When you do the math and you have to add on what's the cost of shipping onto that, it does add up to a certain degree. And that is not something that, you see, higher prices is not something that business welcomes in a sense, right? We don't want to post higher prices or increase higher prices of our products because we know what our consumers' needs are. We know what can fit their pockets. And going past that point is a very scary thing because it means that a lot of the things that you're bringing in or that you're importing could actually remain on your shelves, and that's not where we want to go.
Well, so now that leads me to my next question, because obviously cost of shipping affects imports. You said our manufacturing sector is not as big as it's supposed to be. And I believe, generally speaking, I could agree with that. Diversification has been something, it's always been a buzzword thrown around. Perhaps in the last couple of years, it rose back to more prominent position again. But on a practical level, do we even have the ability to really try to alleviate some of our reliance on imports with local manufacturing? Or is this really, this cost of importation something that the private sector needs to work out with the government in order to get us to a more secure footing?
Well, actually, that's a very key question, and the hard and honest truth about that is, I don't know how Trinidad and Tobago can compete with some of the manufacturing costs of some of the larger developing economies, and particularly when it comes to the labor costs. If it is that we are deciding to manufacture certain things that may be at a higher price level or higher value goods and stuff, I can see it happening. However, when you're looking at things like textile markets, you're looking at apparel markets, you're looking at simple consumer goods, things like USB keys, chargers, all these sort of things, a lot of the electronic consumer items that run our world, right? It's not as simple to manufacture those things in Trinidad and Tobago and be, be financially solvent at the end of the day.
But what about food? Is food a possibility? Because food security, that conversation is thrown about.
Well, food security is essential, but then look what's happening now, again, because of, global dynamics, political dynamics, this war in Ukraine, Russia. We have a situation where, it has exaggerated energy prices.
Yes.
And it's caused an increase. And that has kind of trickled down to, of all places, agriculture, because agriculture has a reliance on, fertilizers and so on. So we have, and the minister has spoken to that, we have increasing prices of ammonia, nitrogen, things like that. And the local farmers are saying, well, that has increased our cost of producing agricultural produce. And the important thing here is that food security should be based on the fact that we should have not only enough food grown here locally, but enough food that is grown at a price that can fit everybody's pocket or that is affordable. And at the Confederation of Chambers, there are some studies that comparative things that we are looking at. It's taken some time for us to access the data, but one of the important things that we wanted to look at was what's the comparative price of agricultural produce regionally as in CARICOM. And let's see, whether the price of agricultural products, given the fact that it would be the same price increases we're going to see now for fertilizer and so on. Well, whether the price of agricultural produce is going to be same in the islands across the board.
But also that leads me to my next question or follow-up. As cost of shipping, could we potentially see global inflation reach the point where the importation from shipping costs, not necessarily labor and those things, but from shipping costs might balance the scales, so to speak, and make local production more competitive? Do you think that might be possible to be seen, or we're not near that point?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not like agricultural economist, so the truth is, I'm not sure. When you're looking at volumes, I think one of the things about trade is volumes. And with huge volumes, very large volumes, you often find, better pricing, you often find cost of certain things are dropping. The reality of the situation is that sometimes even in our wholesale markets in Trinidad, we're looking at tomatoes at $15 a pound, and that is wholesale. So by the time it hits the consumer, you're looking at $18, $20 a pound sometimes. And that's the reality. There are sometimes quite, significant fluctuations in the price of our agricultural produce that is said to be, reflective of weather conditions and different things out there. That being said, I think that we have the ability to grow enough food for our country. And I think we have the ability to grow enough food for our country sustainably. The question is not only whether we can do that, but whether the population can afford to feed themselves based on the prices of our local products. And with some of those products, yes, the answer is yes. With some of the other products, it can be difficult, and that's why a variety of produce is important, so that people could substitute and switch and do, as they can to avoid certain price hikes or price increases, and still be able to fill a basket of goods to feed their family for the week or the month.
Well, so something you said earlier when you mentioned energy prices, and of course, yes, the war in Ukraine is somewhat of an artificial upward pressure on the price of energy because Russia is trying to exert its levers as it finds itself in a somewhat of an unofficial conflict with not just Ukraine, but the rest of the world who is helping Ukraine. That, however, ironically, technically means that in some areas it is good for us with regards to government revenue. Now, I do have to ask, first of all, is the government consulting effectively and enough with the private sector? Because yes, it's good that revenue might mean more government revenue might be a plus, but you also outlined situations where that has some negative impacts on the private sector. Has there been any consultation to try to use the good side to balance off the negative consequences, or can it even be done?
Well, the truth is that, there is some accessibility and some consultation when it comes to certain ministries. Trade, for example. In other ministries, we are not seeing it. So, for example, there is a certain amount of selective engagement. One of the things that, we weren't happy about was at the recent Spotlight on the Economy, we at the Confederation, we weren't, we had asked to be invited to at least send a delegation of a couple of people or something like that to be part of it, whatever. We were told that it would be better to watch it at home or on Facebook or something like that. And that's the level of, that's not the level of engagement we want. Many people would look at some business chambers and say, they're being overtly political and they have no assistance really because they're just going to oppose everything that we're doing. But that is not what I see my mandate as chairman. That's not what we at the Confederation see. And I can't speak for all the chambers, but the reality is that it's simply about representing the issues of business on the ground. And in that tone, we have to be honest. And the truth is that if the government does things that causes business to actually, to commerce to increase and do better and improve, then we will support it, obviously. If there are things that we feel are detrimental or that is hurting business, or it's stunting growth, as it were, then obviously we must speak up to that too. And sometimes that sounds like criticism, and it is criticism, but it's important nonetheless to air the views.
Well, so now back to the genesis of this conversation, and I believe where we started, you were mentioning out of the budget presentation, you're hoping to see something with regards to inflation and to handle inflation. Do you have anything specific that you're hoping to hear?
One of the things we're asking for is really some sort of duty reform, and is going to be and that's a tough sell to the government, simply because the government would say, well, listen, we earn a lot of tax revenue from duty. But if you really want to look at key elements of controlling inflation in the economy, then really the only thing left that you can utilize to bring prices down a bit would be to drop the duties on certain things. Reduce the duties on certain things, even if it's for a limited period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, for example, let's look at cars, for example. So we see that, they're looking to cap the fuel subsidy.
Yeah.
We've been seeing, staged increases in fuel. And that's a very contentious issue and it's very debatable, but on one side, economists say, well, that's what we need to do for the betterment of the country, is wean ourselves off the fuel subsidy. And on the next side, consumers and people and citizens are saying, well, that's a lot of stress on us. It's going to raise the cost of things. But if we see that is happening, if we also see that while this fuel subsidy is being reduced, we're also seeing higher energy prices because of this war in Ukraine and so on, then really when you look at taxing or the duties on things like car parts, on tires, on things that you need to maintain your vehicle,
yes,
then you look at the overall cost of owning a vehicle, whether that's a private vehicle, whether that is a goods vehicle that is doing transport, and many forms for businesses, across Trinidad and Tobago, whether it is to take it from here to Tobago, from here to just 2 streets away, or from here to San Fernando, or whatever. or from the ports of Trinidad and Tobago to wherever it needs to go. The fact of the matter is that you're looking at, you're looking at the expenses it takes to maintain these vehicles, and obviously people are going to increase their prices, and that's one form of inflation that we don't want to see. So reducing things like car parts, reducing things like tires, which is the wear and tear on our roads on a daily basis, particularly for working vehicles. When you look at other elements like that, when you can reduce things from 30% to perhaps the 12.5%, that's a basic, that's VAT, but a basic, let's say 20%, which is duty. Reduce it from 30 to 20 or a bit less for a period while we're dealing with this inflation, it would help. You look at some small businesses like pet shops and stuff, which would deem essential businesses during lockdown. And you look at something as simple as importing a goldfish, for example, which is about the size of your thumb, attracts a duty of 40% upon that. Then you wonder, where's this heading? Is this an archaic construct from way before that these duties were developed?
We're almost out of time. Just quick, digitization is supposedly a priority for electronics. I know at one point laptops or computers had no duties. I'm not sure if it was extended up till now. How is that looking for, as well? Does that have a lot of duties on it?
No, I think digitization is important going forward, but only so much as it can be efficient.
Right.
At the end of the day, bottlenecks can still exist if the logistics are not improved. So, for example, you can say, well, all right, digitization means you don't have to be in a line anymore and people don't have to wait hours or whatever it is. But the end of the day is digitization going to mean that the amount of product, whether it is a license, whether it is a birth certificate, whether it is a driver's permit, whether it's a provisional driver's permit, whether it is some sort of a WASA certificate, does it mean that more of these things are going to be given out in less time? And if we can answer that question and say, yes, digitization means that we're going to see efficiency, which means that we're going to see a provision of the product, of the thing that was digitalized, or the process that was digitalized to give this to people, right? If that is going to mean, well, we can get it faster and that more is going to be given out or the process itself is going to get better, then yeah, let's digitize, right? If, however, it is not, and all of a sudden, instead of physical lines, we have electronic lines, and you still have a 3-week or a 1 month wait, which will be the same as it was before, then does it really justify the level of investment that the government will have to make in it? So really and truly comes again to the ease of doing business and all these other things in the ease of doing business, which again it comes to seeing that you say we have a short period of time. Well, we can throw as much money as we want in things in the budget. The reality is that we've seen that with things like crime. We've seen that like things like the Ministry of National Security, among others, right? The reality is that it doesn't matter how much money we throw at something, we really need a plan. And if we have a plan and we understand, well, all right, the money is going to build this or improve this or to launch this particular plan, and then we're going to look at what the results of this thing is, then yes, then we're going to go somewhere. Well, it's simply coming in a budget and saying it's 55 million and we're doing well because of revenues and we're giving the lion's share to security, the Ministry of National Security and this and that and whoever and whatever, and then we don't see the improvements that we want to see, afterwards, from 1 year to the next, then what is the situation?
Well,
and what are we really doing?
We have to end it there. We are more or less out of time, folks. That is the president of the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers, Mr. Vivek Charan, giving us a lot of good information. And I would just like to say, I'm willing to throw the question out there. Oil revenue, energy revenue is up. So I'd like to support your suggestion. Maybe duties, at least temporarily, should go down because I am afraid of the inflation coming from the rest of the world to TNT on the horizon. But that is basically where we have to end the show. I'd like to thank all of our guests for coming in today. This is AM Prime, folks. And of course, for the rest of the week, we'll be holding down the fort for Mr. Andy Johnson. But on behalf of himself, the producers of the show on WESN, thank you everyone for watching. And of course, tune in at 8 a.m. for Talking Point, where I'll be joined by my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shaw. Until then, stay tuned. Thank you and goodbye.